In November 2022, the quiet college town of Moscow, Idaho, awoke to a scene that would soon grip the nation. The Idaho four University of Idaho students, were found dead inside their off-campus home at 1122 King Road. The hillside neighborhood, usually filled with the sounds of students walking to class or gathering for late-night study sessions, fell into an unnatural silence. The modest three-story house sat under a pale winter sky, its windows reflecting the flashing lights of emergency vehicles. Inside, officers moved carefully through narrow hallways, documenting every surface while the hum of portable heaters and the static of police radios filled the air. Word spread quickly across campus. Friends called one another in disbelief, and parents hundreds of miles away tried frantically to reach their children. By nightfall, yellow tape surrounded the property, and investigators began the slow, methodical process of preserving evidence in a case that had already shaken the sense of safety in this small university community. The tragedy was immediate, but the mystery, how and why it happened, was only beginning to unfold. When first responders entered the house on King Road, they encountered a scene both chaotic and eerily still. The rooms bore signs of ordinary student life: textbooks, holiday decorations, half-finished coffee mugs, now frozen in time. Officers secured each floor, noting points of entry and the position of every object before beginning their initial sweep. Outside, the temperature hovered near freezing, and the steep driveway made maneuvering equipment difficult. Detectives worked under the glow of portable floodlights, while evidence technicians photographed footprints in the frost and collected fibers from door frames. Neighbors gathered at a distance, whispering as they watched the flurry of activity, their breath visible in the cold air. The coroner's vehicle arrived quietly, its presence signaling the grim task ahead. Within hours, state crime lab personnel were en route, and local police requested assistance from the Idaho State Police and the FBI. Meanwhile, the university issued a shelter-in-place advisory, urging students to remain indoors until authorities could determine whether the threat had passed. The once bustling neighborhood now felt suspended. The only sounds the low murmurs of officers coordinating their work, and the rhythmic click of cameras capturing evidence that would soon travel to sterile labs far from the scene. The investigation that followed was exhaustive and deeply technical. Detectives began by reconstructing the victim's final hours, tracing phone records, social media activity, and surveillance footage from nearby businesses. Analysts reviewed hours of digital data, comparing timestamps and geolocation pings to narrow the window of the crime. Forensic teams processed the home for trace evidence using alternate light sources and chemical reagents to reveal latent prints and biological material invisible to the naked eye. Each sample was logged, sealed, and transported under strict chain of custody protocols to the state laboratory, where technicians worked through backlogs to generate DNA profiles. Outside the lab, officers canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking residents for security footage, and checking for unfamiliar vehicles seen in the early morning hours. The community responded with vigilance. Candlelight vigils lined the university's central lawn, while local businesses donated food and supplies to investigators. Parents arrived to escort their children home for the semester, and the campus police increased patrols around dormitories. News outlets from across the country descended on Moscow, their satellite trucks crowding narrow streets, amplifying both public pressure and fear. Yet behind the scenes, investigators quietly pursued leads through digital forensics, vehicle registration databases, and DNA genealogy searches that would soon prove decisive. Weeks passed before a significant development emerged. Analysts identified a DNA profile from a knife sheath recovered at the scene, a clue that would anchor the case. Using advanced genealogical comparison, investigators traced the genetic signature through public ancestry databases, eventually linking it to a family line that led them to a graduate student living several states away. Surveillance teams tracked his movements, noting patterns of travel and behavior that aligned with the timeline of the crime. Digital forensics specialists examined cell tower data, finding that his phone had been in the vicinity of King Road during crucial early morning hours, then powered down briefly, a gap that drew further scrutiny. Each piece of evidence was reviewed by multiple agencies, ensuring that the case met the rigorous standards required for prosecution. Public speculation ran rampant, but law enforcement maintained silence, releasing only measured updates. When an arrest was finally made, the news spread instantly across the nation. Cameras captured the suspect's transfer into custody, the flash of lights reflecting off snow-covered streets, and reporters calling out questions that went unanswered. The community, while relieved, remained somber. The investigation had revealed the meticulous patience of modern forensic science, but it had also exposed the vulnerability of a town that once felt untouched by such violence. In the months that followed, Moscow began the slow process of healing. The house on King Road, once a gathering place for friends, became a symbol of collective grief and resilience. Memorials appeared at the edge of campus, flowers, handwritten notes, and candles that burned through the cold Idaho nights. The university established scholarships in honor of the victims, ensuring their memory would continue in the education of others. For investigators, the case stood as a testament to the power of coordinated policing and the precision of DNA technology, which had transformed an overwhelming mystery into a solvable puzzle. Yet even with an arrest and a pending trial, the emotional aftermath lingered. Students spoke quietly about safety, about trust, about how quickly ordinary life can fracture. Families returned to their routines, though nothing felt routine anymore. The crime scene was eventually cleared, the house later vacated and scheduled for demolition. But its image remained fixed in public memory, a reminder of both loss and determination. In the end, the Idaho Four were not defined solely by the violence that took their lives, but by the community's enduring commitment to uncover truth, honor their stories, and rebuild a sense of peace in the shadow of tragedy.